Tulsi Gabbard just keeps the hits coming out. I mean, she is now a mainstay on Fox News, and she goes on there and tells them pretty much what they want to hear, almost across the board. Here she is discussing the economy and inflation and effectively going full Ronald Reagan.
Listen to the American people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, independents, regardless of party affiliation. People are struggling. People are frustrated with the fact that their government that is supposed to be serving them is ignoring their interests. When you look at the impact of inflation, this is affecting families all across the country. Now you're wondering, okay, well, can I afford this or that? But I can't buy both. And it's just such a terrible thing when our families across the country are faced with this. And when they look to Washington, what do they see? They see another multi-trillion-dollar bill that the Democratic leadership is pushing. And I'm not an economist, Tammy, but I can tell you with common sense, like most Americans have, I know that dumping trillions more dollars into our economy right now is only going to make this inflation crisis worse.
Listen, that's just wrong. And I'm going to break it down for you in a second. I'm going to give you all the information on it. But I thought the same thing at first. And I reached out to friends of mine who are economists and friends of mine who are experts. Because I thought, well, it had to be maybe Trump's COVID stimulus package and then Biden's COVID stimulus package. There's too much money flooding the system, and that led to inflation. And so I was asking them questions with that implication in there. And they said to me, point blank, period, that's not what's causing inflation. What's causing inflation is the supply chain crisis. So let me go ahead and break this down for you. There's an article in PBS that explains it very well. Inflation began to soar in early 2021 and has been hovering at about 5% or so year on year since May. That's more than double the 2% pace that the Fed has set as a target. The reasons prices are rising are complex and many, but one of the most important relates to the dynamic of supply and demand, and both are to blame. Let's start with demand. Even though early in the pandemic, consumer demand dropped as people hunkered down amid lockdowns and unemployment skyrocketed, it has soared over the past year. Not for services like restaurants and travel, but for goods, mostly ordered online. E-commerce activity has simply mushroomed to levels that never existed before the pandemic. Demand for products has significantly outstripped the market's capacity to produce or ship what is ordered. Some people aren't even going to the supermarket, hardware store, or restaurant anymore because they do all their ordering online. Many retailers, such as Macy's, Target, and others, have had to navigate this economy with scarce inventories and high freight costs to stay alive during the pandemic. They continue. These trends have created more demand than the delivery carriers can accommodate, stretching their ability to deliver products. For example, the holiday shopping season is predicted to have 4.7 million packages a day beyond what the system can possibly absorb or deliver. Storing these packages for even a short period costs money. Given there is great difficulty finding drivers, containers, and labor across industries, big retailers are offering generous education and other benefits to both attract and keep employees on hand as a means of adding capacity. All these added costs to hire, store, and deliver are usually passed on to consumers. They say supply is down. At the same time, supply chains remain a mess and are only getting worse. Bottlenecks have piled up across Asia, putting great strains on the capacity of supply chains to deliver in a timely fashion. And severe global shortages of drivers and other workers are making it difficult to expand capacity or fix other problems plaguing the supply chains, so they can't break free of the thick mud they're in. They continue. This creates a shortage of products getting through that limit competition, causing price increases. There are dozens of huge container ships continually idling near ports in Los Angeles, New York, and elsewhere around the world, which is tying up large quantities of merchandise waiting to be unloaded. There are over 500,000 shipping containers with about 12 million metric tons of goods near Southern California alone. Ports have tried to lengthen their operating hours. U.S. President Joe Biden has made it a key issue and plans to spend billions of dollars fixing the problems, but there are not enough workers and drivers to unload the cargo. By the way, that's also because a lot of the workers, it was like quite literally indentured servitude that a lot of these drivers were working in. Crystal Ball did a great piece on that on her show. Such delays cost money because businesses choose then to carry more inventory, which they pass on to customers. As an illustration, let's look at Nike, which largely depends on Vietnam for much of its shoe production. It lost 10 weeks of production because of lockdowns within that country and is taking an average of 80 days to get shoes from Asia to retailers in North America, twice as long as before the pandemic. As a result, shoe prices are soaring like everything else. So, that's what the real problem is. And on the demand side of the issue here, there is a way to address this, and it's to bring back American manufacturing in a strong way and basically make anything here that we have the capacity to make here and that we can make here. Because then you'll have more goods and there won't be the shortage of goods. So that's one thing you could do to fix this. And there's another aspect to this inflation issue as well, which is a story that we covered on the show not too long ago. There are now companies that are just taking advantage of the fact that there's inflation in a lot of industries and with a lot of goods, and they're jacking up the prices and blaming inflation even when these particular goods are not nearly as impacted as other goods. There's a great article on that in Business Insider. Again, we covered it on this show and gave you the specifics on it. So they're using this as an opportunity to say, well, what do you want me to do? It's just inflation. There's nothing I can do. And so as a result of that, the evidence that we know they're doing this is that corporate profits have skyrocketed yet again. Yet again. So they're using this as an excuse to jack up prices across the board, even though prices aren't really high for every single good in every single industry. So that's the real problem. I just explained to you the real problem. And so it doesn't have anything to do with the spending packages. So what Tulsi Gabbard is doing is she's advocating for austerity. Well, if you're advocating for austerity, that's just right-wing economics. That's just like buying into an Austrian economics framework. That's Hayek and von Mises and Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman. That's that thought process. Now that is a thought process that is antithetical to leftism. That's just the opposite of leftism. That's not leftism. And, look, when you go back and look at, I challenge you to do this because I remember covering it on the show. Tulsi Gabbard's 2019 launch speech when she ran for president. She was nothing like this. Nothing. She ran on Medicare for all, which, by the way, that would increase government spending a lot. It would overall reduce healthcare costs, but it would increase government spending. So she's going around talking about, big government's bad. And she's now said that this is the second time she's made some right-wing economic comment. She even said, we need to end the war so that we can reinvest here at home. She said that on the campaign trail. Well, now she's like, well, reinvesting here at home is bad because we're spending trillions of dollars and that'll lead to inflation. But it won't. And look, I get it. If you thought the big spending bills led to inflation, you're forgiven because I thought the same thing. And I follow this stuff day in and day out. But it is incumbent upon you, if you're going to go on, one of the biggest so-called news networks in the country, the biggest actually, and talk about this, it's incumbent upon you to do the research and find out if what you're saying is actually accurate. And so that's why I reached out to my friends who know more about this than I do. And then they explained the issue to me and I was like, oh, okay. And she just didn't do that. Now, why didn't she do that? Well, it's either, it's either ignorance, like I think it's this, so I'm just going to say it's this, or it's trying to play to the audience. And, there's been a lot of thoughts about Tulsi recently that that's exactly what she's doing because she even did this on foreign policy issues. That was the area where she really, staked her claim as like, I'm the anti-war person. And then Biden pulled out of Afghanistan and she wasn't anywhere remotely found to defend him doing it. It was a weird mix of people. It was like me, Sagar, Crystal, and like Michael Tracy and Matt Iglesias were like the only people in the country who were like, this is good. Tulsi, who led the charge on let's end the wars, was... Now, to be fair to her, at that time, she was overseas doing some active duty stuff, but it's not like when she came back, she defended it. In fact, the next time she spoke about foreign policy, she went on Tucker Carlson's show, and Tucker threw a softball down the center of the plate about Biden drone bombing babies and murdering them. And instead of Tulsi being like, yeah, we shouldn't drone bomb anymore, this is crazy, this is illegal, this is grotesque, this is offensive violence, this is prosecutable, this is a war crime, instead of doing that, she swatted it aside and pivoted to, but Islamism sure is bad, isn't it? In a story about how our tax money was used to massacre babies, your takeaway is, yeah, but their ideology is so bad. What happened? What happened? So look, this is full Reaganomics claptrap is what it is. We need to embrace austerity because of because of inflation, even though the inflation has nothing to do with the spending. So what does that mean, Tulsi? Now, definitely don't do Medicare for all, because that's going to be government spending. Definitely don't do... She was arguing at the beginning of the pandemic, she wanted $1,000 checks to people every month. Well, now you're saying, well, we can't spend trillions of dollars. We can't do this with the inflation going on. So are you now against that too? So no more Medicare for all. No more UBI. What else do you want to leave out? What else? Tulsi, if I had told you Tulsi Gabbard was going to do right-wing economic talking points in 2016 when she said F you to the DNC to support Bernie Sanders, or even in 2019 when she launched her campaign for president, you'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? If I told you she was going to be doing Reaganomics, 2 years ago, you'd be like, what? Of course she won't. Well, here you have it. It's a shame, man. It's a real shame. It's pathetic. And I hate it. And listen, so what I'm trying to do here is just correct the record, give you the facts on the situation, let you know what's really driving inflation. Nothing I said here is controversial. Nothing. And my guess is there will be no course correction. There will be more segments coming about the big spending of the Democrats being bad. The real criticism of the Build Back Better bill is not, you're spending too much. It's, you're spending nowhere near enough, and you stripped out so many of the popular provisions. That's the real criticism. She's not doing that criticism. She's now doing a right-wing criticism. I think that speaks for itself.